A shattered soul leaves no footprints in the snow, only the lingering scent of despair. Deep within the forbidden mountains, a hunted outcast thought she had vanished from the world forever. She was wrong. A predator far more dangerous than her past had just caught her scent on the winter wind. In the sprawling, isolated territory of the Silvermoon Valley, a werewolf's worth was measured by their rank, their strength, and their bloodline. Isolde Harding possessed none of these. As a lowly Omega, she was the pack's invisible servant, a scapegoat for the frustrations of the stronger wolves. Her days were a blur of grueling labor, scrubbing the stone floors of the pack house, tending to the vast hunting hounds, and enduring the casual cruelty of the Mercer family, the ruling alpha lineage. Isolde had long accepted her miserable fate. She kept her head bowed, her voice soft, and her scent masked beneath layers of wood smoke and ash. But the cruelest twist of fate was not her low birth. It was the cruel joke the moon goddess played on her 19th birthday, the night of the winter solstice mating ball. Every unwed wolf of age was required to attend the solstice ball. The great hall of Silvermoon was draped in evergreen boughs and lit by 1,000 roaring torches. Isolde had been relegated to the kitchens tasked with carrying heavy silver platters of roasted venison to the high tables. She was slipping through the crowded, stifling hall when the air suddenly grew thick. A scent hit her crisp autumn leaves, sharp pine and heavy rain. It was intoxicating primal, and it commanded her soul to surrender. Her inner wolf, a small, timid creature that usually hid in the recesses of her mind, suddenly howled, clawing at her chest. Mate. Isolde froze, dropping a heavy crystal goblet. It shattered against the stone floor, drawing the eyes of the entire room. But Isolde could only look at one man. Standing at the head table, draped in a cloak of black wolf fur, was Rylan Mercer, the future alpha of Silvermoon, the most ruthless, arrogant, and vicious wolf in the valley. Rylan's golden eyes snapped toward her. The sudden, agonizing recognition flared in his gaze, but it was instantly swallowed by absolute horror and revulsion. He, the future leader of one of the most powerful packs in the north, was fated to the weakest, dirtiest Omega in his household. The whispers began immediately, as the heavy, undeniable pull of the mate bond crackled through the quiet room, invisible but suffocatingly real to every werewolf present. Rylan's jaw clenched. Beside him stood Beatrice Sterling, a high-ranking beta female from the neighboring Ironwood territory. Their union had been politically arranged for months to secure a vital trade route. Rylan looked from the stunning, impeccably dressed Beatrice to the trembling, ash-stained Isolde. Rylan. Isolde whispered, her voice cracking. The bond compelled her forward, her soul begging for the other half of its existence. Silence! Rylan snarled, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings. He stepped down from the dais, his heavy boots echoing like a death knell. He stopped 3 feet from her, his upper lip curling in disgust. You think the goddess commands me? You think I would ever sully the Mercer bloodline with a weak, pathetic creature like you? Please! Isolde gasped, clutching her chest as the rejection began to form in the air, a dark, suffocating magic. Rylan raised his voice so every member of the Silvermoon pack could hear. I, Rylan Mercer, future alpha of Silvermoon, completely and permanently reject you, Isolde Harding, as my mate. I sever the bond. I cast you out. You are nothing to me. The words struck Isolde with the force of a physical blow. The invisible tether connecting their souls snapped. A sickening, tearing sensation ripped through her chest, so agonizing that she fell to her knees, screaming. Blood poured from her nose, and her vision swam as her inner wolf wailed in pure, unadulterated agony. The pain of a rejected mate bond was known to drive wolves insane, sometimes even stopping their hearts. Above her, Rylan didn't even flinch. "Get this filth out of my sight," he ordered his guards. "Strip her of the pack name. If she is found within Silvermoon borders by sunrise, execute her." Tossed out into the freezing, unforgiving winter night, with nothing but a thin wool cloak, Isolde had a choice: lay in the snow and wait for the broken bond to kill her or run. Fueled by a sudden feral will to survive that she didn't know she possessed, Isolde chose the latter. She dragged her agonizing, feverish body toward the one place no Silvermoon wolf would dare follow: the jagged peaks. A treacherous, frozen wasteland of jagged cliffs and bottomless ravines, the peaks were a death sentence. They were inhabited by feral, mind-lost rogue wolves and monstrous beasts that had survived since the ancient times. As Isolde crossed the icy river that marked the pack's border, she wept, leaving behind the only hell she had ever known, and walking willingly into another. 6 brutal months passed. The Silvermoon pack had long assumed Isolde Harding's bones were picked clean by vultures, but the pain of rejection, which usually killed a weak wolf, had instead forged Isolde into something entirely new. In the heart of the jagged peaks, halfway up a perilous mountain face, Isolde had claimed a deep, hidden cavern. The timid Omega was gone. Her hair was matted and wild, her skin tanned by the harsh wind and scarred from near-fatal encounters with the mountain's predators. She had learned to mask her scent entirely by crushing bitter pine needles and frozen mud into her skin. She had learned to trap snow hares and fish in the freezing rapids with spears fashioned from shattered bone and flint. Her inner wolf, once a weeping victim, had gone silent, entering a deep protective hibernation. But survival was a delicate razor's edge. Winter in the peaks was endless, and a terrible blizzard was brewing, darkening the sky to a bruised purple. Isolde was miles from her cavern, hauling a heavy deer carcass she had managed to bring down through the deep drifts. She was exhausted, her muscles burning the old ache of her severed bond, throbbing in her chest like a phantom limb. Hundreds of miles away, in the ancient towering fortress of Ethelgard King, Caelan Roth sat upon a throne of iron and direwolf skulls. He was the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, an undisputed apex predator, whose very name caused alphas like Rylan Mercer to tremble. Caelan was a legend, a hulking, scarred warrior who had single-handedly united the fractured northern packs a decade ago. But King Caelan carried a dark, closely guarded secret. He was succumbing to the Alpha's curse. For 35 years, Caelan had searched for his fated mate, and for 35 years he had found no one. A wolf of his immense power needed an anchor, a mate to balance the crushing, violent dominance of his inner beast. Without one, the beast was slowly taking over. Recently, Caelan had begun experiencing blackouts, waking up miles from his fortress, with the blood of rogue wolves on his hands, and no memory of the slaughter. Knowing his sanity was slipping, Caelan had organized a sweeping border patrol, pushing his royal guard toward the dangerous jagged peaks, hoping the grueling physical exertion would quiet the madness in his mind. As the blizzard descended upon the mountains, Caelan and his elite guard were forced to make camp in a sheltered gorge just miles from where Isolde was struggling with her hunt. The storm hit Isolde with unprecedented fury. Blinded by the snow, she lost her footing on a treacherous ridge. She tumbled down a steep embankment, her body slamming into the icy rocks. She hit the bottom of a shallow ravine with a sickening crunch, her leg twisting at an unnatural angle. Before she could even cry out, a low rumbling growl echoed through the howling wind. From the whiteout emerged a massive rogue wolf. It was emaciated, driven mad by starvation, and drawn by the smell of the fresh deer meat, Isolde had dropped. But as the rogue's crazed eyes locked onto her helpless form, it realized fresh living prey was much better. Isolde dragged herself backward, drawing a crude flint knife from her belt. The rogue lunged. Isolde slashed wildly the blade, tearing through the rogue's shoulder, but the beast's heavy claws swiped across her torso, shredding her thick hide coat and slicing deep into her side. Warm crimson spilled onto the pure white snow. The sudden rush of her blood washed away the mud and pine sap she had used to hide her scent for months. Into the freezing mountain air, the true scent of Isolde Harding was released, a heart-breakingly sweet aroma of rain-soaked wildflowers, crushed mint and honey. 3 miles away, inside a heavily fortified command tent, King Calen Roth suddenly froze. He had been in the middle of a strategic meeting with his generals, but mid-sentence his voice caught. His massive hands gripped the edge of the oak table so hard the wood splintered. His pupils dilated, swallowing the ice blue of his irises until his eyes were entirely black. Mine. The voice of his inner wolf did not just speak. It roared, shattering the fragile control Calen had left. "My king?" his lead commander asked, stepping back in alarm as Calen's aura suddenly flooded the tent, a suffocating, terrifying wave of pure alpha dominance that forced every guard to their knees. Calen didn't answer. He tore through the heavy canvas flaps of the tent, shifting mid-stride. There was no painful transformation, only a fluid burst of muscle and bone, until a monstrous, pitch-black direwolf, larger than a draft horse, hit the snow. He didn't wait for his guard. He tore up the side of the mountain, propelled by a primal frenzy, so violent it shook the earth. She is bleeding. My mate is bleeding. Back in the ravine, Isolde was losing the fight. The rogue pinned her down, its jaws snapping inches from her throat. She squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the end. Suddenly, a deafening, earth-shattering roar eclipsed the howling wind. Something massive and black collided with the rogue. Isolde watched in stunned horror as a monstrous wolf, terrifying in its size and power, ripped the rogue off her. The battle lasted less than 3 seconds. With a brutal snap of its jaws, the black wolf broke the rogue's neck and tossed the lifeless body aside like a rag doll. The giant beast turned slowly its chest, heaving its muzzle stained red. It locked its midnight eyes onto Isolde. Isolde trembled violently, pressing herself into the snow, expecting to be devoured. But the monster didn't attack. It took a slow, hesitant step forward, suddenly letting out a low, pathetic whine that completely contradicted its terrifying appearance. It sniffed the air, inching closer, until its massive, wet nose gently nudged her injured side. Right before Isolde's eyes, the beast shifted. A man knelt in the snow before her. He was huge, heavily muscled and scarred, radiating an intimidating, ancient power. Yet his hands were trembling as he reached out, hovering over her bleeding wounds, afraid to touch her. "You!" Calen breathed, his deep voice, rough and broken, with a mixture of overwhelming relief and violent rage. He pulled off his heavy fur cloak and gently wrapped it around her shivering, broken frame. As he lifted her into his arms, pulling her against his bare, burning chest, the warmth of his skin sent a terrifying yet glorious shockwave through Isolde's dormant soul. Her inner wolf, dead for 6 months, suddenly opened its eyes. "Who did this to you?" Calen whispered, burying his face into her snow-matted hair, inhaling her scent as if she were oxygen, and he had been drowning his entire life. He felt the phantom scar on her soul, the undeniable rotting trace of a severed mate bond. Someone had claimed his queen rejected her and left her to die. Calen's eyes turned black once more as he looked out over the jagged peaks toward the south, toward Silvermoon. "I will burn their entire world to ash." The Alpha King swore into the storm, pulling his mate tighter to his heart. "I have found you." For 3 days and 3 nights, Isolde drifted in a feverish haze. She was vaguely aware of being carried through massive iron gates of the scent of burning cedar, and of a booming voice issuing frantic, terrifying commands that echoed off stone walls. Mostly, though, she was aware of the heat. A heavy grounding warmth pressed against her, keeping the icy grip of death at bay. When she finally opened her eyes, she was not in a cold, damp cellar. She lay in the center of a colossal 4-poster bed, draped in crimson velvet and thick direwolf pelts. The room was the size of the entire Silvermoon pack house, illuminated by a roaring hearth. "You are awake!" Isolde flinched her instincts, demanding she shrink away. Sitting in a high-backed leather chair beside the bed was the monster from the snow. King Calen Roth. In the light of the fire, he was even more intimidating. He wore only a dark linen shirt left open at the chest, revealing a torso painted with the brutal faded scars of countless wars. Yet his ice-blue eyes held no malice, only an overwhelming, breathless relief. Beside him stood a human man in a crisp wool suit, adjusting a leather medical bag. This was Dr. Maxwell Ford, a private physician brought in from the human settlements across the border. The presence of a high society human doctor, secretly contracted by the wolves, grounded the chaotic magic of the fortress into a stark, undeniable reality. Doctor. Ford had spent years treating the elite through the Bancroft Medical Syndicate, but even he looked terrified of the massive Alpha King hovering over his patient. "Her ribs are mended, Your Majesty," Dr. Ford said, his voice tight. "The wolf healing factor is remarkable, but the spiritual trauma, the scar on her chest over her heart, that is old magic. Dark magic." "Leave us, Doctor," Calen commanded softly. It was not a request. Ford bowed swiftly and hurried from the chamber, the heavy oak doors sealing shut behind him. Isolde pulled the furs up to her chin, her body trembling. You saved me." "Why?" Calen slowly approached the bed, sinking to his knees on the stone floor so he would not tower over her. The submission in his posture was staggering. An Alpha King bowed to no one yet. Here he was, kneeling before a broken Omega. "Because you are mine." Calen rumbled the words, vibrating in his chest. "I have searched the earth for you for 35 years, little wolf. When you bled, my soul tore open. You are my fated mate." Tears welled in Isolde's eyes, but they were born of terror, not joy. "No, you are mistaken. I am an Omega. I am already rejected." She touched her chest where the phantom ache of Ryland's cruelty still burned. "I am damaged goods, Your Majesty. If you claim me, the bond will poison you." Calen let out a low, dangerous growl, but it was not directed at her. It was directed at the memory of the one who had hurt her. "The fool who rejected you knew nothing of the ancient laws. You are not an Omega, Isolde. Your wolf went dormant because it was starved of its true anchor. You are a queen, my queen." He reached out his massive, calloused hand, gently hovering over hers. "May I?" he asked, a silent plea in his eyes. Isolde hesitated, then gave a tiny nod. The moment Calen's skin touched hers, a shockwave of golden light seemed to explode behind her eyes. The rotting, agonizing void in her chest left by Ryland's rejection instantly vanished. In its place poured a rushing river of pure, untamed power. Calen gasped as well, his shoulders slumping, as the dark, violent curse that had plagued his mind for years instantly dissolved. She was his anchor. He was her shield. Over the next month, Ethelgard transformed, The terrifying Alpha King became a fiercely devoted shadow to his new Luna. As the bond solidified, Isolde underwent a shocking physical and spiritual metamorphosis. Her dull hair turned to shimmering threads of spun gold. Her posture straightened. Her inner wolf, once a timid pup, grew into a radiant silver beast that ran side by side with Kaelin's massive black direwolf under the northern lights. But peace in the werewolf world is always written in blood. One evening, Kaelin's lead commander entered the royal study, his face grave. "My king, a diplomatic envoy has crossed the southern border. They are begging for an audience." Kaelin did not look up from the maps he was studying. "From where?" "Silvermoon's sire. They are led by their new alpha, Rylan Mercer." Isolde froze by the hearth, a crystal goblet slipping from her fingers. Kaelin caught it before it shattered. His eyes met hers, flashing pitch black. "It seems," Kaelin said, his voice deadly soft, "the ghosts of your past have come to be judged." The great hall of Ethelgard was a masterpiece of intimidation. Pillars of black iron stretched toward a vaulted ceiling, lost in shadow. King Kaelin sat upon his throne, a terrifying portrait of absolute authority. Beside him, separated by a thin veil of shimmering silk, sat a second throne. The heavy doors groaned open, and Rylan Mercer stepped inside, accompanied by his mate Beatrice. Isolde watched from behind her veil, her heart perfectly steady. Rylan looked dreadful. The arrogant, pristine future alpha was gone. His face was gaunt, his eyes rimmed with dark, exhausted circles. Beside him, Beatrice looked equally haggard, her once glowing coat now dull and shedding. Rylan stopped at the foot of the dais and dropped to one knee, forcing Beatrice down beside him. "Rise, Alpha Mercer." Kaelin commanded, his voice echoing like thunder. "Why do you trespass in my domain?" Rylan stood his hands, shaking slightly. "Great King Kaelin, I come to beg for your aid. Silvermoon is dying. A terrible blight has fallen over our lands since the winter solstice. Our crops wither, our rivers have turned to sludge, and our wolves are growing inexplicably weak. We are starving." Behind the veil, Isolde narrowed her eyes. The winter solstice, the night he broke the bond. "And what do you believe caused this curse?" Kaelin asked, leaning forward, resting his chin on a massive fist. Rylan sneered, a flash of his old arrogance returning. "Dark magic, sire. I was wrongfully paired by the goddess to a wretched, cursed Omega. I did the only honorable thing to protect my pack. I rejected her and cast her out to die. But in her spite, I believe the vile creature cursed my lands with her dying breath. I ask for your royal healers and a loan of your winter stores to save my people from this witch's revenge." The silence in the great hall grew so heavy it threatened to crush the stone floor. The king's guards, elite warriors, who knew the truth of their new queen, subtly shifted their hands to the hilts of their broadswords. Kaelin stood up. He did not speak. He simply let his aura slip. The pressure of the Alpha King's dominance slammed into Rylan and Beatrice like a physical avalanche. Beatrice screamed, dropping to the floor, coughing violently as the air was sucked from her lungs. Rylan fell to his knees, his hands clawing at his throat, his eyes bulging as he stared up at the monstrous power of the Northern King. "You speak of honor, boy," Kaelin whispered, descending the steps of the dais. "You speak of curses." Kaelin stopped in front of Rylan, towering over the trembling Alpha. "The moon goddess does not make mistakes, Rylan Mercer. She gifted you a jewel, and in your arrogance, you threw it into the mud. The blight on your land is not a curse from an Omega. It is the goddess herself, rotting your territory from the inside out, because you broke a sacred law. You severed a true bond." "Sire, please." Rylan choked out blood, dripping from his nose as the pressure intensified. "She was nothing. She was weak. She was meant to be your Luna. Kaelin roared the sound, shaking dust from the rafters. But your stupidity became my salvation. For what you threw away, I claimed. Kaelin turned toward the veiled throne and extended his hand. Come forward, my queen. The silk veil was drawn back. Isolde stepped into the light. She was breathtaking, draped in an elegant gown of midnight blue silk and silver fur. A delicate crown of forged iron rested upon her golden hair. Her skin glowed with the undeniable intoxicating aura of a royal Luna, but it was her eyes that made Rylan stop breathing entirely. They were no longer the downcast, terrified eyes of an abused servant. They burned with a fierce, ancient silver fire. Rylan stared at her, his jaw slack, his mind completely shattering. The scent of rain-soaked wildflowers and honey drifted over him, but it was no longer subdued. It was overpowering, wrapped in the terrifying, protective spice of the Alpha King's scent. Isolde. Rylan whispered, his voice cracking. A sudden agonizing wave of regret and pure devastating loss hit him. His inner wolf, realizing the magnitude of what they had forfeited, began to howl in endless, suicidal despair inside his mind. No, it cannot be. You are. I am Isolde Roth, she said, her voice clear, cold, and ringing with absolute authority. Luna Queen of the Northern Territories, mate to King Kaelin. Beatrice openly wept on the floor, realizing her status. Her pack and her life were tied to a fool who had doomed them all. Rylan crawled forward, reaching a desperate, trembling hand toward her. Isolde, please. I was wrong. I was blind. You are beautiful. You are my fated. Before Rylan could finish the sentence, Kaelin's boot slammed into Rylan's chest, sending the Silvermoon Alpha flying backward across the hall. He crashed into a stone pillar bones, snapping audibly. Speak to my mate again, and I will rip your tongue from your skull. Kaelin snarled, his eyes bleeding to pitch black. Isolde placed a gentle hand on Kaelin's arm. The king instantly froze, his heavy breathing slowing at her touch. She stepped past him, walking gracefully toward the broken man, bleeding on her floor. You cast me into the jagged peaks to die, Rylan, Isolde said softly, looking down at him with nothing but pity. You thought power was measured by cruelty, but true power is surviving it. She turned back to her husband. My king, Silvermoon is filled with innocent wolves who are starving because of their alpha's vanity. What is your decree? Kaelin wrapped an arm around Isolde's waist, pulling her flush against his side. The Mercer bloodline is hereby stripped of all titles, Kaelin declared to the room. Rylan and Beatrice are banished to the jagged peaks to survive as rogues. As for Silvermoon, it is no longer an independent territory. It is annexed by the crown. We will feed your people, and they will answer only to their new queen. Guards immediately seized Rylan and Beatrice, dragging the screaming, weeping wolves from the hall. Rylan's eyes never left Isolde, locked in a permanent stare of shattered regret until the heavy iron doors slammed shut, sealing his fate forever. Isolde leaned her head against Kaelin's chest, listening to the steady, powerful beating of his heart. She had walked into the freezing mountains expecting to find her grave. Instead, she had found her throne. Did you love this story of betrayal, revenge, and fated mates? If Isolde's ultimate triumph over the cruel Alpha gave you chills, hit that like button. Right now, share this video with your fellow fantasy romance lovers, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more thrilling, pulse-pounding werewolf dramas delivered straight to you every single week. What should happen next? Let us know in the comments below.